Commander Zachary Reynolds stood on the cold steel floor of the Titan base, his eyes locked on the holographic map in front of him. The base, located on Saturn's moon Titan, was a strategic position for humanity. It was now under siege by the Zanari, the most powerful alien race in the galaxy. The approaching Zanari war fleet was represented on the map by ominous red dots, each one determined to obliterate humanity's last line of defense. Zachary's mind was sharpened by years of experience. He traced his finger over the map as he spoke thoughtfully. "We've lost contact with our allied fleets. The Zanari have isolated us," he said, his voice firm and resolute. "They want to bring about our end, but we still have plenty of fight left in us." Lieutenant Idris Collins approached, his face pale. "Commander, this could turn into a suicide mission. Our defensive shields are weakening under the heavy fire," he said, unable to hide the concern in his voice. Zachary placed a reassuring hand on Collins' shoulder, locking eyes with him. "Idris, fear is our enemy," he said calmly but with authority. "With our courage, intelligence, and strategy, we can defeat them. We just have to remember, they are just as afraid as we are." As the Titan base went into defensive mode, the Zanari fleet began entering the moon's atmosphere. Explosions echoed around the base. The vibrations from the underground tunnels and bunkers mixed with the anxious whispers of the soldiers. "Maximize the output of the defense cannons." Zachary shouted, "Target and fire." Suddenly, the entire base moved in unison. The defense cannons unleashed a deadly barrage on the Zanari ships. The void of space was illuminated with explosions and laser beams. "We got a hit," shouted a soldier as a Zanari ship exploded in the distance. But this was only the beginning. Zachary's eyes moved to the radar screens. "Attention, everyone. Enemy capital ships are approaching." This was just a preliminary attack, he said. There was no sign of fatigue in his eyes, only focused determination. "We need to anticipate their strategy. What's behind this assault?" Meanwhile, Deputy Commander Harper Briggs spoke over the emergency radio. "Commander, the Zanari are deploying gravity field disruptor devices. Their target is to destroy our defensive perimeter around the base." Zachary's brow furrowed. "That's why our communications were cut off," he said through gritted teeth. "They're setting a trap. But we can set our own trap as well." He quickly began to formulate a plan. "Prepare the assault team, Collins. While we defend, we'll launch an attack to divert their attention." Collins hesitated. "This is very risky, Commander. We can't afford to lose any more men." "We can't win this war without taking risks," Zachary replied firmly. "They came to us, so we'll go to them. Get ready." As the defense units fired back to repel the enemy, Zachary's assault team emerged from the base's secret underground tunnels, advancing toward the enemy's right flank. The Zanari were caught off guard by this unexpected move. "Move forward. We'll corner them," Zachary shouted. In a short time, the enemy found themselves caught in their own trap. "Now!" Zachary shouted. The assault team opened deadly fire on the Zanari ships. As explosions echoed in the void of space, the Zanari fleet began to scatter. But the victory was short-lived. Suddenly, a massive Zanari ship appeared from a hidden orbit, targeting the base and unleashing a massive energy blast. "Get down!" Collins shouted, pulling Zachary and the other soldiers to the ground. A huge explosion rocked the Titan base. As the air filled with smoke and flames, Zachary stood up, clutching his bleeding arm, and looked around. "Is everyone okay?" he asked. The soldiers were wounded, but they were still standing. Zachary stood firm, eyes filled with determination. "This is just the beginning," he said sternly. "They haven't seen how strong we are yet. We will defend this base, no matter the cost. He looked at the holographic map once more. We'll need to change our strategy, he added. We'll set traps to slow down the enemy. Our resources are limited, but if we use them wisely, we can win this battle. Zachary's words sent a wave of courage through the soldiers. Throughout the corridors of the Titan base, soldiers began to take up their defensive positions again. Let's show them what they're up against, Zachary said. We'll fight for humanity. As the Titan base glowed in the darkness, Zachary and his team prepared for one last battle. They knew the Zanari were a formidable foe, but they weren't about to give up. If they want to attack us, let them come, Zachary muttered. We'll fight to the end. As the massive Zanari warship loomed over the Titan base like a shadow, the tension inside the base reached its peak. Commander Zachary Reynolds kept his eyes fixed on the radar screens in the control room, trying to anticipate the enemy's next move. His soldiers, though wounded and exhausted, continued their resistance. They were holding on, driven by their faith in Zachary's leadership and the belief that he would lead them out of this chaos. "Commander, the situation is worsening," said Lieutenant Idris Collins, sweating over the control panel. "Our defensive shields are rapidly depleting. After Zanari's last attack, our shields are only at 20% capacity." Zachary nodded without taking his eyes off the screen. "I know, Collins," he said, his voice firm but controlled. "But surrender is not an option. We fight here, and we win here." At that moment, Deputy Commander Harper Briggs entered the control room. His face was serious, but there was a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "Commander, we might have a solution," he said excitedly. "If we can infiltrate Zanari's main ship, we can disable their gravity field disruptors. That would allow us to re-establish communication with our reinforcements." Zachary listened carefully to what Briggs was saying. "That's very risky," he said, frowning. "Infiltrating the Zanari ship won't be easy. They have a strong defense, and the gravity disruptors are most likely kept in the main control rooms. Getting there could be a suicide mission." "But we have no other option," added Collins, supporting Briggs' suggestion. "If we don't regain communication, everyone here will die. We have to take this risk." A brief silence fell over the room. Everyone in the control room was waiting for their commander's decision. Zachary looked around as he tried to gather his thoughts. In their eyes he saw fear, yes, but more than that, he saw determination. They were the last line of defense for humanity. If they gave up now, the hope for the rest of the galaxy would be lost. "All right," Zachary finally said, his eyes hardening with determination. "We'll carry out the infiltration mission. Briggs, you and Collins will be with me on this mission. Assemble a team with our best men. We need to be fast and silent." Briggs nodded and immediately went into action. "Understood, Commander," he said, and quickly left the room. Shortly afterward, Zachary and his chosen team were making their way through the underground tunnels toward the Zanari ship. As they advanced through the narrow and dark tunnels beneath Titan's frozen surface, the soldiers' breaths were sharp and rapid. This was one of the most dangerous missions of their lives, and they all knew it. "Stay alert," Zachary whispered, scanning the walls of the tunnel. "We could be ambushed at any moment." The infiltration team gathered under the shadow of the enemy ship, holding their breaths as they reviewed the plan. After studying the formidable defenses of the Zanari ship, Zachary carefully pointed out a spot. "The main ventilation shaft is here. It will lead us directly to the control room," he said, adding, "but there are Zanari soldiers patrolling along this route. We must be silent and quick." They exchanged short, determined glances. No one was willing to back down. Zachary gave the signal to move. They emerged from the tunnel and sneaked into the dark corridors of the ship. Silently, they slipped past the patrolling Zanari soldiers, fearing even to breathe. Every move was calculated with utmost precision. "There's a patrol ahead," whispered Briggs, keeping his eyes fixed on a corner. The Zanari soldiers were larger and stronger than humans, but this time the advantage lay in intelligence. Zachary signaled them to stop. "Change of plan," he murmured. "We'll split into 2 groups. One group will create a diversion while the other infiltrates the room with the disruptor devices." Collins nodded, mustering his courage. "I'll lead the diversion team, Commander," he said. "There's no one better for this job than you." Zachary lightly touched Collins' shoulder. "I trust you, Idris," he said. "Be careful." Suddenly, Collins and his men began creating a distracting noise in the corridor. As the Zanari patrol headed toward the source of the noise, Zachary and Briggs quickly advanced, using the distraction to their advantage to move toward the control room. Every second posed a risk of the Zanari becoming aware and sounding the alarm. Finally, they reached the door to the main control room. The door was locked with a strong security code. "Briggs, it's your time," Zachary whispered. Briggs swiftly approached the security panel and placed a code-breaking device on it. His fingers were trembling, and his breath quickened. The device's screen flashed from red to green as their heartbeats continued to race.
Come on, come on,"
Briggs muttered. Finally, with a beep, the door opened. The dark corridors of the Titan base were filled with the echoes of explosions and the roaring commands of Zanari soldiers. In the main control room, Commander Zachary Reynolds and his team were engaged in a life-or-death struggle. The encroaching darkness of the enemy foretold the arrival of their allies, but they had to survive until then. "Briggs, try to reboot the systems," Zachary shouted, firing his laser gun. "You need to buy us some time." Briggs was working furiously on the console. "We've taken too much damage," he said with concern. "The main systems are down, but if we can get the communication system back online, we can contact our reinforcements." At that moment, Collins returned with the team that had been outside. His face was covered in sweat, but there was a determination in his eyes. "Commander, we've evaded the Zanari patrol, but more are coming," he said breathlessly. "We need to get out of here." Zachary could hear the approaching footsteps of the enemy. "Time is running out," he said sharply. "Everyone, get ready. We're going to defend this door to the end." "Commander, we might not make it out of here," Briggs said, his voice filled with a hint of hesitation. "I know," Zachary replied, turning to look at his comrades. "But this is our fight, to the end. While we hold this place, Briggs will get the communication system back online." Suddenly, the door exploded, and Zanari soldiers began pouring in. Instead of retreating, Zachary and his team stood firm and opened fire. As lasers danced through the air, enemy units fell one by one. "Hold the line!" Zachary shouted, charging towards the enemy. No one steps back. The enemy's intensity was growing. The Zanari soldiers were throwing everything they had to break the human defense. The smoke and fire filling the room created a chaotic atmosphere, but the human resistance was steadfast. Collins, taking down an enemy soldier in close combat, encouraged his comrades. "We hold this line till the end." Meanwhile, Briggs noticed a light blinking on the console. "Commander," he shouted with excitement, "the communications system is back online. We can send a signal to our reinforcements." A glimmer of hope crossed Zachary's face. "Good job, Briggs," he said. "Send the signal immediately. Tell them we're holding and we need help." Briggs quickly began sending the signal. "This is Titan Base," he said, his voice trembling but determined, "requesting immediate assistance. Enemy forces are overwhelming us. Repeat, requesting immediate assistance. After a brief moment of silence, a voice echoed back. "Titan Base, this is Admiral Gardner of the Starfleet. We have received your signal. Help is on the way. You must hold out." A wave of hope swept over everyone in the control room. Reinforcements were on their way. But the Zenari attacks intensified further. The enemy advance was pressing down on them harder with every passing moment. Zachary, reloading his weapon, had to make a quick decision. "Briggs, we need to fall back," he said. "We must hold our defensive position and wait for reinforcements to arrive." Briggs nodded. "Understood, Commander," he said. "But the enemy is too strong. We can't just stay on the defensive." "You're right," Zachary replied. "We need to surprise them with a strategic move." Collins approached with a gleam in his eye. "Send me through the small tunnel system," he said with determination. "I can infiltrate their rear lines and hit them where they least expect it." Zachary thought for a moment, then nodded. "All right, but be careful," he said. "Don't leave us hanging, Collins." As Collins prepared his gear and moved towards the narrow tunnel, the others took their final defensive positions. "Everything is ready," Briggs said. "We have a few minutes to catch them off guard." Zachary took one last look at the Zenari forces and then turned to his soldiers. "This is our last chance," he said. "I know how brave you all are. Now is the time to show them the spirit of humanity." The soldiers nodded with determination. At Zachary's signal, they once again defended the control room against the Zenari forces. As enemy soldiers poured in, Collins' rear attack provided an unexpected advantage. The Zenari were thrown into disarray, giving the humans a breathing space. "Now!" shouted Zachary. "Sweep them all away." The Zenari forces, caught off guard by the surprise attack, began to retreat. Collins took down enemies one by one from behind, while Zachary and the others increased their offensive. When they saw the reinforcement ships appearing in space, their hopes of victory soared. "Hold on, reinforcements are here," Briggs shouted, a smile spreading across his face. The reinforcements attacked the Zenari ship, pushing the enemy forces back. On the final defensive line, the humans felt the exhilaration of winning this battle, which would decide the fate of the galaxy. Zachary paused for a moment and looked around. The smiles on his soldiers' faces were symbols of the triumphant human spirit. "We did it," he said quietly, with a slight tear in his eye. "This is humanity's victory." And the Titan base shone once more with the light of humanity. As the enemy retreated, the humans knew they had won the battle. Zachary looked at his soldiers and silently thanked them with his eyes. Because today, here, this small but determined group had changed the fate of humanity. "We fought to the end and won," Zachary said, his voice tired but proud. "But this is only the beginning. There is still much to be done." And as the Titan base once again sent a beacon of hope across the galaxy, humans looked to the future with hope. Now they knew that the human spirit would always fight against the darkness and eventually win. I hope you had a good time. If you liked my story, do not forget to comment and subscribe to my channel. Goodbye. See you in the next story.